Chesterfield has brought you Dragnet, transcribed from Los Angeles.
Tonight, more adventure with Barry Craig, confidential investigator.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is P. Fitz, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the April 23rd issue of the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Suggestion of homicide rocks Niagara Health. Winterstein family lawyer seeking to place blame following woman's death. Niagara Health leadership is assuring its staff that they have the hospital system support amid an unsettling request that an inquest jury classify Heather Winterstein's death as a homicide. Chief Executive Officer Lynn Guerrero and Chief of Staff Dr. Kevin Chan on Tuesday sent an email to all hospital employees after lawyer Rachel Gardner, representing Winterstein's family, asked for a finding of homicide in her closing submissions to the inquest jury. An autopsy concluded Winterstein died of sepsis on December 10, 2021, while waiting for more than 2 hours at St. Catherine's Hospital that day. The 24-year-old Indigenous woman visited the hospital a day earlier and was ultimately sent home on a city bus after being given Tylenol and Advil. Gardner told the jury delaying treatment that could have saved Winterstein's life amounted to homicide. Guerrero and Chan said in their email, Niagara Health categorically disagrees with this assertion. We know this can be difficult to see and hear, especially when language used in legal setting is reported more broadly and without full context, they said. They said Niagara Health lawyer Kate Crawford also discussed the issue while providing her closing submissions Tuesday by saying the medical evidence points to a complex and unusual presentation that made diagnosis difficult. Crawford addressed the idea of homicide directly, saying there was no evidence of any intentional act by any individual or by the system, and that the evidence could not support that finding, Guerrero and Chan said in their email. Lawyers representing Niagara Emergency Medical Services and Niagara Regional Police also emphasized the cause of death was sepsis and that the manner of death was natural causes. Guerrero and Chan stressed that an inquest is not a trial, and under the Ontario Coroners Act, inquest juries do not determine fault, liability, or blame. An inquest jury's role, they said, is to make findings of fact and to consider recommendations that may help prevent similar deaths in the future. Nevertheless, they acknowledged seeing the word homicide in headlines is unsettling. It carries weight outside of this process and can feel personal for those who were involved in Heather's care or work in our hospitals. They called it a difficult process for staff, including many who have had to revisit a difficult period. You have heard your work, your decisions, and your environment examined closely, and you have continued to care for patients while carrying that weight, the email said. Please know this, we see you and we support you. Niagara Health Communications staff said the hospital system would not publicly discuss the inquest until after the jury has made a decision in the case. The inquest was adjourned late Tuesday morning to allow jurors to deliberate on the evidence they heard since proceedings began on March 30th. Guerrero and Chan said healthcare environments, particularly emergency departments, are complex and demanding. You make decisions with the information you have, often under pressure with competing priorities. The reality came through clearly during the inquest, and it matters, they said. At the same time, we remain committed to learning from this process. We will carefully review the jury's recommendations when they are released and take action where change is needed. Guerrero and Chan reminded staff about supports and resources available to them if they are feeling the impact of this coverage and the inquest, and thanked employees for their care, the care they provide every day, often in challenging circumstances. Vow renewal services offered at Niagara Falls City Hall. Staff revised fees after low initial proposal was rejected. Niagara Falls should not cheapen the experience for couples wanting to renew their wedding vows in what is known as the honeymoon capital of the world, say some city councilors. That's why Council on Tuesday sent a report back to staff that recommended the municipality charge Niagara Falls residents $59 and non-residents $100 for the new service at City Hall. A couple of councilors said the fee, which staff noted would cover administrative expenses, felt too cheap for the destination as world-renowned as Niagara Falls. What's the point of renewing your vow for $59? It just doesn't have the impact or the significance of something very ceremonial, said Councilor Ruth N. Newestig. I think it's very cheap. We're only missing the 99 cents after the $59 to cheapen it further, added Councilor Chris Dabrowski. I would like to see 2 or 3 options, maybe a package that starts at $150 or $200, but offer up a $500 or $1,000 package that has all those caveats, he said. I don't know if I'd propose a number now. I would love to have staff come back with a report on various options. Staff said they will do further analysis and bring additional proposals to council. Niagara Falls already performs civil weddings at City Hall. The addition of a vow renewal ceremony is intended to be managed through a collaborative approach involving customer service, responsible for addressing inquiries and referring scheduling requests, and the city clerk who will oversee scheduling and the delivery of the service. The newly renovated courtyard under construction in front of City Hall would also be leveraged as an outdoor venue for weddings and now vow renewal ceremonies. Staff's report said Lincoln is the only municipality in Niagara to offer vow renewal as a service at a cost of $59, and which includes a commemorative certificate. We're not the town of Lincoln. We're the city of Niagara Falls. We are the honeymoon capital of the world, said Dabrowski. When people come here to renew their vows or get married here at City Hall, we're a world-famous destination. We have a huge international crowd. We have a brand new courtyard out there, and I just wonder if we're shortchanging ourselves. Clerk Bill Matson said it's up to council to propose any additional fees, adding those proposed were just cost recovery for the staff time. Right now, there's not a big interest from my standpoint for vow renewals. Of course, we haven't promoted these in the past, he said. We don't get a lot of them, but maybe in some promotion, with some promotion, we would. So that's why I thought we would go ahead and entertain them. Dombrowski said he agrees with the idea of promoting the new service, which would come with increased fees. I think we're undervaluing our brand, and we're shortchanging ourselves with only charging $59 for locals and $100 for out-of-town couples. So if we're going to put some marketing dollars behind it and look at generating some revenue through this avenue, I say we increase it, he said. Counselors joked that Matson could dress up as Elvis for ceremonies, which the clerk responded by saying, absolutely not, before adding, thank you very much, which was Elvis's signature phrase used to close his songs during live performances. Council had an AI-generated image of Matson dressed up as Elvis put up on a screen in council chambers. We could be as corny as we want here, and people would probably pay for it, but I think we're getting a little off topic, said Matson, laughs in the gallery. Getting back to serious business, Dombrowski said he's glad staff will report back. I'd rather not look at the town of Lincoln and use that as a benchmark, and maybe we don't have to look as far as Las Vegas to see the various options that they have, but maybe a hybrid of the two, and we can use it as a revenue generator, he said. I know expenses are large here at the city, but if it's a low-hanging fruit, why not do the best we can? Dozens of brief hydro outages spark frustration in Pelham neighborhoods. The power cuts out just long enough to disconnect a Zoom call and reset an alarm system, then snapped it back on, only to happen again minutes later. Some days pass without interruptions, others see as many as a dozen outages. In recent weeks, these split-second power disruptions have become a daily issue for Hydro One customers in Pelham, affecting the work, school, and peace of mind. As interruptions continue without clear explanation, frustration is mounting. Residents look to social media to share complaints, responses from Hydro and local officials, and to raise concerns about potential damage to their homes and electronics. Jennifer Gertz said the issue at her Fonthill home has persisted for more than a month and continues to worsen. At one point, the power had flickered or went out more than 30 times in a 24-hour period. Gertz said she is concerned for the residents relying on medical devices such as CPAP machines, while repeated power surges and placing stress on electronics and appliances, interrupting sleep routines in children, and adding daily distress for families. A working mother who runs a business from her home and is a full-time nursing student, Gertz said the outages have disrupted Zoom meetings, affected her income, and created challenges with coursework that relies on technology. Some of my exams are online and are worth 40% of my final grade. I'm terrified to do them at home. Last night's outage appears to have fried our iPad and MacBook, as both were working before bed and on charge, and now neither will turn on. I'm trying to reconcile how to get a computer replaced weeks of exams when the week of exams when I have no time or resources. Fenwick resident Bob Murden said Hydro One outages damaged the inputs on the back of his alarm server to the point where it's no use and my alarm company has to replace it. He is also concerned about potential damage to his newly installed $18,000 furnace heat pump, that thermostat, with the outages already causing the system to malfunction. It was because of all the power outages, it just spoiled the little computer inside the thermostat, Murden said. Even simple activities like watching television have become aggravating. On Sunday, he said outages were happening so frequently, he eventually gave up and went to sleep. It's just an annoyance because just when you think you're settled up, it goes off again, said Murden. 8-9 times a day is not pleasant to deal with. In an email Monday, Hydro One said over the last 2 weeks, the crews have been working to identify and resolve the issues causing the outages and flickering so customers in Fonthill, Fenwick, and Ridgeville have the reliable power they need. Work has included patrolling power lines using newly installed grid monitoring technology, removing tree limbs, branches that could come into contact with the lines, and conducting reliability and thermal imaging studies. You were, you were listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. To hear the remainder of the One Hydro article, please contact Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 716-821-5555, and someone will gladly read it for you. Overdose victim wrapped in a blanket and dumped in a parking lot. Niagara Falls man to be sentenced for committing indignity to a body. When a woman suffered a fatal drug overdose in his apartment, a Niagara Falls man did not call 911. Instead, he wrapped the 22-year-old's body in a blanket and dumped her in a parking lot. Ryan Mader, 38, appeared in Ontario Court of Justice in St. Catharines on Tuesday and pleaded guilty to committing an indignity to a dead body. On the morning of October 14, 2025, court heard the young woman, not identified by name, had gone to the offender's apartment on Main Street near Ferry Street. Assistant Crown Attorney Ashley Gallia said the woman was acquainted to some extent with Mr. Mader. Video surveillance from the apartment building's hallways showed the offender and another tenant going back and forth into each other's units several times. Also in the video, the Crown added, the CCTV footage captured, to some extent, conversations between the defendant and another tenant. Mader can be heard saying, "Wake up," and repeatedly calling out the woman's name. Court heard the woman died that afternoon. Her body, wrapped in a blanket, was then carried outside the building and left in the rear corner of the parking lot. The body was discovered several hours later, and the Niagara Regional Police Homicide Unit launched an investigation. It was later determined that the woman had died from the toxic effects of fentanyl, methamphetamines, and cocaine. Mader turned himself into police the day after detectives released his photograph to the media. Justice David Thomas ordered a pre-sentence report be prepared prior to sentencing. Mader, who remains in custody, is scheduled to return to court in June. The offense carries a maximum penalty of 5 years behind bars. Doug Ford says Ontario has sold controversial $28.9 million private plane. Ontario has sold a recently purchased used private jet for the same $28.9 million price it paid, Premier Doug Ford said Wednesday. Ford's office announced the purchase of the used 2016 Bombardier Challenger 650 jet on Friday, and by Sunday the Premier had agreed to sell it after blowback from the public. We gave it back to Bombardier for the exact same price. No one lost any money, Ford said. His office confirmed the sale price of $28.9 million later on Wednesday morning. Bombardier did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy said he was not aware that we were out any money. He said the province will disclose documents about the purchase and sale of the plane in the normal course of action. The province took possession of the plane last week, news that the Toronto Star broke on Friday, and that was then confirmed by the Premier's office. The office said Ford needed the plane because Ontario is vast, and he also needed something more secure in order to travel to the United States in his ongoing fight against President Donald Trump's trade war. On Wednesday, Ford said the province did not take possession of the plane and that Bombardier has it. Ford apologized for how the transaction went down, saying he should have told taxpayers in advance, and made the case as to why he needed the plane, but he did not apologize for buying it. He said he still felt it was the right decision to buy the plane, but he decided to reverse course after hearing from people over the weekend. The Premier also said it's very difficult to travel in northern Ontario while flying in a single propeller planes. Ford has spoken often about the intense fear of flying. The purchase last week set off a storm of anger among taxpayers, which included deluge of calls and messages to Ford's cell phone. Criticism from across the political spectrum was swift, too, with opposition parties dubbing the aircraft gravy plane. The Premier made it clear he was miffed about the media coverage of the purchase, saying it's under more scrutiny than Prime Minister and every other premier in the country. Ford said the cabinet signed off on the purchase earlier this year, and the plane would have been used for other government purposes, not just to ferry him around. New Democratic leader Merritt Stiles has written to Auditor General Shelley Spence asking for an investigation into the purchase and sale of the plane. There are serious and growing concerns about the financial stewardship, transparency, and overall value of the money associated with this transaction, she writes. Stiles writes, Ontarians deserve a clear and independent accounting of how public funds have been used in this matter. Hidden trail camera pointed at homes. Halton police are warning public after a camouflage trail camera was found pointed at homes in a Milton neighborhood. A homeowner found the camera and battery wrapped in camouflage tape hidden in shrubs, investigators said in a news release. Police are warning that these cameras may be a tactic used by criminals to monitor homes before break-ins. Footage from the cameras can be used to identify opportunities to commit offenses when homes are vacant, the news release said. Investigators are urging the public be aware of the tactic and to not touch the devices found near their homes. York Regional Police previously located two similar devices placed near trees and bushes in a Vaughan neighborhood last month. The cameras appeared to show homeowners' daily movements. Warmer weather rolls in. Police said they anticipate a rise in residential break-ins. Authorities are asking the public to be on high alert to suspicious activities and report anything to the police. Police, there's a picture of a smashed camera if that might make you feel better. And police anticipate a rise in break-ins as warmer weather increases. From the hills of Scotland to the halls of Ridley College. Upon hearing them played, the bagpipes stir the very souls of those who love the unique resonating sound they produce. The tone is sometimes described as emotional and haunting, even mournful. Combined with the swaying of the kilts as pipers stride in unison at a parade, the pipes are loved by many. But history shows not everyone loves them. Bagpipes are legally classified as an instrument of war under British law for about 250 years, from 1746 until 1996. The designation came about after the Battle of Culloden, where a captured piper, James Reed, was executed for treason after arguing he carried only a musical instrument, not a weapon. The courts ruled that because Highland regiments used pipes to rally troops and terrify their opponents, they were indeed a tool of war, said local piper Mike Grant. Grant, a second-generation piper and Scottish Canadian, discovered his father William was a piper after the older man's death in 2002, when Grant came across his bagpipes. It was a transformative moment for the Niagara Falls man, already an accomplished musician on multiple instruments. He took up the pipes soon after. His father's pipes are now a treasured keepsake. Grant is a transportation coordinator at Ridley College in St. Catharines and is now a grade 5 piper and a member of the Niagara Regional Police Band. With approval of the private school, Grant recently introduced the pipes to students at Ridley College and enlisted his friend and music teacher Matt Stevens to instruct the students. Ridley College opened in 1889. Most recent numbers place enrollment at 870 students from junior kindergarten to grade 12. Of that number, more than 375 are boarding students, representing more than 60 countries. The school offers more than 75 co-curricular activities in the arts, athletics, leadership, and community service, all on a 90-acre parcel of land that more closely resembles a close-knit village. Adding bagpipes to its already extensive music program in a school recognized for its multinational student body just made sense. Offering it to the community at large opens up possibilities, said Grant. Ridley College, said Stevens, has a very good music program and has been very welcoming. There were no barriers when it came to teaching this program, said Stevens. It's been great to see all the pieces come together. The first 5 students came through the door at the start of the school year last fall, added Stevens. Students begin on a practice canter before touching a full set of pipes. The canter, which resembles a recorder, allows beginners to learn finger techniques without managing bag pressure or drone noise. Creating music, said Stevens, builds confidence. Music, he said, is whatever you decide to create from it. It's your sound. There are different styles of playing New Age, traditional, so play around with it and try something you have never tried before. Historically, a cantor would be used for about a year, but we introduced bags fairly quickly, said Stevens. It helps them start early with learning proper breathing. It is a key to learn what good piping is and have fun in the process, he added. Playing bagpipes also has a direct tie to the school's cadet program. According to Ridley, the 162 the Ridley College Royal Canadian Army Cadet Corps is a historic voluntary co-curricular program for students aged 12 to 18. It emphasized leadership, citizenship, self-confidence, and teamwork through training, marching, and ceremonial duties like the annual cadet parade. Recognized by Cadets Canada, Ridley's cadet program is long-standing tradition and co-curricular activity grounded around in outdoor education, leadership development, and community service. Past Ridley students have served during military conflicts, including the Second World War, during which they played a role in the liberation of the Netherlands, all as senior officers, said Grant. Ridley College honors Remembrance Day through the student-led program and holds solemn overnight vigil at the school's Second World War Memorial Wall. Cadets participate in wreath-laying, act as guards of honor, and read services in the Memorial Chapel to honor the more than 141 alumni who have died in service. And Piper's, it's been a humbling to learn about my background and pass along the knowledge. In the fall of 24, Grant and his wife and two youngest of his four children visited Scotland, where he played Amazing Grace near the castle to honor his heritage and his late father. As much as Grant said he loves the pipes, he also said they were the most challenging to learn of all the instruments he plays. You are blowing into a bag with 4 holes in it. You can't see your hands. You are playing everything by memory while playing the exact same as the other pipers as the band marches together while trying not to pass out, said Grant with a laugh. How hard can it be? New students are welcome, even from the outside Ridley College. For more information, contact Matt Stevens at Matt_Stevens@ridleycollege.com. We're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Let grief abate before making a decision. My wife's father's recently passed away, leaving her a sizable sum of money. The timing, though devastating for everyone, couldn't be better from a financial standpoint, as we have recently been debating the need for renovating our current home or moving. Much of the decision boils down to finances and which option is less expensive. I would prefer to move. My wife would prefer to renovate. One of the reasons I don't want to renovate is we would then move in with her parents, well, now just her mother, for the duration of the work, which would take about a year. I knew I couldn't handle living with both her parents, though I imagine living with just her widowed mother may be slightly easier. After meeting with an architect and designer, it looks like the cost of both is almost equal. However, now with the money her father left us, we could buy an even bigger, better home. The renovation can only go so far on the existing footprint. My wife is digging her heels into the reno. Our last conversation ended with her throwing the, well, it's my money, so I get final say card at me. Now I'm hurt and angry. Where do we go from here? Crossroads? Start by telling your wife you love her and you know she is hurting and grieving the loss of her father. If possible, put off any decision-making for a good 6 months. That way your decisions won't be affected by deep sadness she, and I imagine you on some level, are feeling. Also, depending on her mother's physical and mental health, there may be changes coming that will again affect your finances and living situation. For example, if her parents still live in a big home, her mother may not want to stay there alone. She may wish to downsize to an apartment, or she may need assisted living, or she may want to live with you and your family. Take a few months to research different neighborhoods, school districts, if that matters. Look at magazines and online and create your list of must-haves and negotiables. Then in a few months, when the dust is settled on your father-in-law's passing, sit down with your wife again and look at your options with fresh eyes. Forget what she said in the thick of her past despair. It was an emotional outburst. My husband hasn't worked in over 5 years, but lives off the money his father gives for helping him around the office. My father-in-law owns several used car dealerships and has made a very good living for himself, giving my husband and his siblings everything they could desire without being over the top. All the children went to university, and the other two came out with good, lucrative careers. Not my husband. When I met him, he was working with a real estate agent and a builder, doing deals and making great money, but those two had a falling out, and my husband was collateral damage. I need him to do something more than whatever it is he's doing, both for our bank account and his self-esteem. He's a shell of who he was. How can I help him? Collateral damage. Your husband would benefit from a life career coach. He needs to talk through what his interests are and how they mesh with his skill set. Don't add financial pressure piece at the moment. It will only hinder the process. But put a timeline on it, because maybe he needs a kick in the butt. PM says no entry fee on trade talks. It's not a case of the United States dictates the terms, Carney said ahead of formal negotiations. Canada will not make any concessions to the United States ahead of negotiations on the Continental Trade Pact, Prime Minister Mark Carney said Wednesday, as he insisted Washington will not be allowed to dictate the terms of talks. Carney was responding to a Radio Canada report citing officials who said the Americans are imposing an entry fee on trade talks with Canada and are demanding concessions before negotiations begin. It's not a case of the United States dictates the terms. We have a negotiation. We can come to a mutually successful outcome. It will take time, and we'll take the time, Carney said as he arrived in Parliament Hill Wednesday. Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement is up for mandatory review this year. Mexico and the U.S. agreed to begin formal talks on that review in January. Canada and the U.S. have not reached that point yet. When asked recently if Canada should make more concessions to the U.S. to get the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration to the table, Carney said no. Earlier in the scrum, Carney said in French that Canada will seek concessions from the U.S. but will not make any concessions. The Prime Minister said there are multiple levels of contact between Canadian-American and American officials, and both sides have their own lists of trade irritants. We will sit down and work through those issues with a broader approach in the negotiation. We've made some counter proposals, and the time will come to really roll up our sleeves, Carney said. United States Representative Jamieson Greer told Capitol Hill Committee Wednesday that Canada and the U.S. have different priorities on trade. He said while Canada is looking to build more trade relationships with international partners, the U.S. is trying to correct the problems of globalization. Those two models don't fit together very well, Greer said. Greer cited a report his office released that pointed to provinces' refusal to stock American alcohol on liquor store shelves and high tariffs on American dairy products as trade irritants, getting in the way of further talks with Canada. I've been pretty consistent over the past year that if we can, get some changes in Canadian trade practices, it's going to help me get over the political hump that we face here in the United States, Greer told the committee. I'm going to continue having conversations with these folks behind closed doors, but I hope we get over the hump and on some of these things to have significant talks. Greer alluded to potential enforcement action if American alcohol is not returned to Canadian shelves. News and brief articles. Air Canada jet near miss. U.S. Federal Aviation Administration reports a near miss incident involving an Air Canada jet at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York on Monday. The FAA says the pilots of a Republic Airways flight took evasive action after the jet missed its intended approach and flew too close to the Air Canada plane. Monday's incident comes as the two Canadian pilots were killed when an Air Canada jet collided with a fire truck at New York's LaGuardia Airport last month. Stronach second trial delayed. Canadian business person Frank Stronach's second sexual assault trial has been pushed back to next year. Stronach, who is currently awaiting decision in his Toronto sexual assault case, was previously set to stand trial in nearby Newmarket this fall. Court heard Wednesday that the jury trial is now set to start in May of 2027 and expected to last for 4 weeks. Several days of motions, including the application of to sever the case into more than one trial, are scheduled in January and March. Stronach was charged in 2024 with 18 offenses involving 13 complainants. Higher river levels stabilizing. Officials in parts of Quebec are expressing cautious optimism as river levels appear to stabilize, even as the number of flooded homes continues to rise. The city of Gatineau says that water levels rose less than expected on Tuesday, suggesting the peak is near. The city says around 190 buildings were potentially flooded, while another 300 are isolated due to road closures. House Leader defends committee rule change. Liberal House Leader Stephen McKinnon is defending the government's move to seize greater control over the parliamentary agenda. McKinnon said Wednesday he will soon move a motion to change the rules governing the House of Commons to ensure the Liberals have the most votes on committees. He said members of Parliament from the governing party should hold a party majority of the seats on House Commons committees and rejected a suggestion the government will use the new powers to push legislation through Parliament. From the start, we've made it very clear we want to work collaboratively with parties in the House. We don't want to play silly partisan games that wastes time and the money of taxpayers. McKinnon told reporters in the House of Commons foyer, "We want to work together to achieve big things for Canadians we all represent." In a fundraising email to supporters, the Conservatives have branded the move a cynical power grab that will make it easier for the government to avoid scrutiny. Committees are a key step in examining legislation and holding the government to account through studies. The opposition can leverage committees when they hold control over the committee's agenda to force inquiries into scandals to put the government on its back heels. Opposition MPs can also revise bills and stymie the legislative process when they hold a majority vote. Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal government was granted a majority earlier this month through a set of by-election wins by those MPs, but those MPs have not yet been sworn in. One motion to change the committee makeup was introduced in the House. It will kick off the debate before it can pass. You are listening to reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Continuing with the article, majority governments traditionally hold a majority of seats on House committees, but the rules of the current House of Commons, called the Standing Orders, were designed for a minority. When the Liberals won minority government in last April's election, MPs agreed to form committees with 4 Liberals, 4 Conservatives, and 1 member from the Bloc Québécois. But this motion would increase the number of Liberal representation on committees, something McKinnon noted could have instead been a reduction of opposition MPs at the table. McKinnon is proposing most committees instead be made up of 7 Liberals, 4 Conservatives, and 1 Bloc member. The Bloc would be the biggest loser since it currently holds a deciding vote on committees. Carney's Liberals secured their majority on April 13th when they swept 3 by-elections in the Toronto area and Montreal suburb, Terrebonne, giving them 174 seats in the House of Commons. The by-election results, combined with 5 opposition MPs who crossed the floor to the Liberals in recent months, vaulted Carney's party over the threshold for a majority, something it did not achieve in last year's general election. The Liberals won 169 seats last April, shy of the 172 for a simple majority. In world news, wildfires across Georgia and Florida destroy homes and force evacuations. Wildfires burning across southeastern U.S. were intensifying Wednesday after destroying nearly 50 homes in Georgia and forcing evacuations and school closures in some communities. Some of the biggest blazes were along Georgia's coast and between and around Jacksonville, Florida, a state that is facing one of the worst fire seasons in decades. It was not yet clear how wildfires started, but a long drought, low humidity, and strong winds were fueling them. Georgia's 2 biggest wildfires together have burned more than 80 square kilometers, and at least 4 other smaller fires have been reported in the state. The area of the state where the fires were burning is exceptional or extreme drought, the most dire levels according to the U.S. Drought Monitor. In southeast Georgia, the fast-moving Brantley County fire was threatening more homes Wednesday and after destroying 47 a day earlier, according to Joey Cason, the county manager. The fire grew in size by roughly 6 times in just half a day, Tuesday, he said. Nearly a dozen of fire agencies are helping fight the blaze, Cason said at a news conference Wednesday. Brantley County Sheriff Len Davis warned residents to be ready to evacuate, noting that the winds could shift rapidly and unexpectedly. At least 800 evacuations have taken place in the county, and 5 shelters have opened as the fire threatens 300 more homes, the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency said. Another large fire that started in Clinch County had also forced evacuations which were underway in multiple communities, the Georgia Forestry Association said. This is a serious and evolving situation, said Tim Lauermore, president and CEO of the association. Florida firefighters on Wednesday were battling 131 wildfires that had burned 88 square kilometers, mostly in the state's northern half. Bill will eventually ban tobacco purchases. This is Canadian Parliament. Opponents of smoking got a breath of fresh air Tuesday as Parliament passed a bill that will put cigarettes out of reach for future generations. The end of smoking and the devastating harm it causes is no longer uncertain. It's inevitable. Hazel Chisman, Chief Executive Action on Smoking and Health, said after decades-long campaign in favor of legislation approved Tuesday. Children born after December 31st, 2008 will be banned from ever buying cigarettes under the Tobacco and Vapes Bill. The legislation will also allow the government to regulate tobacco, vaping, and nicotine products, including flavors and packaging. It is currently illegal to sell cigarettes, tobacco products, or vapes to people under 18. But most youths today will continue to face a ban their entire life as the minimum age to buy cigarettes rises each year. The passage gives the UK one of the toughest anti-smoking measures in the world. The law is similar to one in New Zealand passed in 2022, but that was then repealed by a subsequent government. The number of people who smoke in Britain has declined by 2/3 since the 1970s, but about 6.4 million people, about 13% of the population, still smoke, according to official figures. Authorities say smoking causes 80,000 deaths per year in the UK and remains the number one preventable cause of death, disability, and poor health. Living on the edge of fear in Trump's latest reality show. A mother struggles to keep life normal for her kids. The night before Donald Trump threatened to annihilate an entire civilization, I put my kids to bed, hugged them extra tight, and gently stroked their foreheads as they drifted to sleep. Despite the assurances I tried to give them that all would be well in the morning when they woke up, and that the U.S. president would not follow through with threats of destruction and violence on his social media all week, I felt incredibly anxious. How could I not, after seeing Trump's erratic social media over the past few weeks, laden with profanity and vague threats of bombing Iran into oblivion, or taking the country of 92 million back to the Stone Age, or the arbitrary timelines and deadlines set by the U.S. administration every few days, promising peace for 48 hours and then threatening extreme levels of violence a few days later. And then the apocalyptic posts. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will, warned Trump on April 7th. If an agreement wasn't reached with the Iranian government by 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. We will find out tonight, he added, the framing making it appear like an announcement of a primetime show instead of an admission of potential war crimes. How could one know this is simply more of Trump's blustery political style, where his social media posts reflect the incoherent style of politics that he has become known for? Or if this time around his threats were warning of something more sinister, such as a nuclear attack on Iran. For those of us living in the eye of the storm, it feels as though we are living in Trump's latest reality show. His frenzied social media posts dictate whether our cities will have night of missile attacks or days of peace. His prolific comments suggest he knows he has a willing audience responding to his every word. His rants are not comedic relief for us, but bring us closer to the horrific possibility of the war dragging on, or worse, a nuclear attack morbidly justified. A few fear now exasperated by news that the peace talks between Iran and the U.S. have failed. Like millions of others, my family's life was disrupted in March after the U.S. and Israel launched airstrikes on Iran. For the first time, we experienced sirens, heard the roar of the fighter jets and the bombs of ballistic missiles and drones being intercepted in the skies above us. Last month, after failing to find flights, we drove 10 hours from the UAE to Saudi Arabia to be closer to family and to escape the daily barrage of missiles and drones coming into the country from Iran. And since then, we have watched in horror as the violence has erupted in an endless loop with incessant bombings by the U.S. and Israel in Iran, Lebanon, and Palestine, and through the counterattacks on U.S. allies in the Gulf from Iran. Yet, despite the overwhelming noise of war around us, we have tried to carry on. Normal day-to-day tasks intertwined with preparing for worst-case scenarios have helped my anxiety. A routine trip to the grocery store to buy extra jugs of water, in case, as the news tells us, a regional desalination plant is hit, which will cut off our clean water source. Stocking up on flashlights and candles in case the country's energy infrastructure comes under attack. But you learn quickly that without a bunker, there isn't much you can do to prepare for a potential nuclear attack. So the night before Trump's doomsday deadline, I took the kids to the park instead. We laughed, we played, and tried to forget about the horrors of the world and the geriatric politicians playing cruel politics with the lives of innocents all across the world. That night, it took a while for my children to fall asleep. Maybe they could sense my anxiety. I looked at the clock, did a quick calculation. 8 p.m. Eastern Time meant 3 a.m. in Riyadh. I could barely sleep. At 3 a.m., an emergency alarm warning of hostile aerial threat on our phones woke up the household. Frightened, the kids rushed into my room and jumped into the bed. I checked the phone to find out what was happening. Was it a missile attack, a drone interception, or a nuclear annihilation we all had been fearing? A breaking news alert caught my eye. Mere hours before the deadline, a 2-week ceasefire was struck between the U.S. and Iran. Just like in the movies, a disaster averted in the nick of time. Unintentionally, I let out a sigh of relief. Life goes on. Trump's latest reality show continues. This was an article by Noor Javed. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the April 23rd issue of the Niagara Falls Review. We read from the Niagara Falls Review every Sunday at 11 p.m. Your reader has been P. Fitz. Thank you for listening.